Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with Dave's Faves. And today I want to talk to you about one of the great sets of string quartets that is still little acknowledged. And I've discussed this set before, but I think it doesn't hurt to really give it a good sales pitch, because it deserves the closest attention and rewards the closest attention. It is the complete Mendelsohn string quartets. And this is on the Cedille label with the Pacifica Quartet. This is just an extraordinary set of chamber music performances. It's worth it for anybody who cares about great quartet playing. But there are 7 Mendelsohn string quartets. One of them is very, very early, the E-flat major quartet from 1823, when Mendelsohn was, I don't know, what was he, like 5 or something? No, he wasn't that young, but he was young. He was like an unbelievably insane prodigy. And let's see if we can just, do we have his dates somewhere here? I should know Mendelssohn's dates. You know what? I'm going to go find his dates. Wait a minute. Here's the M section. Just wait 1 second here. Mendelsohn. I can't believe I just didn't have that memorized, but you know me. I just kind of go for it. There we go. 1809 to 1847. So in 1823, he was 14. 14! And he wrote a string quartet, a very good one, an E-flat major. So that's pretty extraordinary. But then he wrote the 6 canonic string quartets. And then there are 4 string quartet movements that were found after he died that are also usually included. So that's what's in this set. 7 quartets in all, and 4 little movements. So they fall rather interestingly into sections. And one of the things that I really love about having them all in a set like this is that you get to hear how he evolved as a composer. And he did. He evolved amazingly. It's just that most of the evolution happened between the ages of 7 and 10, which is kind of incredible. But this is true. And you'll want to hear that, because Mendelssohn was a composer of real substance who usually gets dismissed as this sort of Victorian dandy who wrote sort of emotionally inhibited but very polished and formally stiff kind of, neoclassical. He's a romantic composer, but not really. But none of that's true. And the best place to understand who he really was, and you should because he was great, is in his quartets. Because you start with the early E-flat quartet, which is a beautiful post-Mozartian sort of quartet. But Mendelssohn was also one of the very few composers who loved and appreciated late Beethoven. And so when he came to write his first 2 quartets, the numbered ones, numbers 1 and 2, which are, let's see, which are these numbers? It's opus 12 and 13. They are extraordinary works, formally fascinating, very advanced harmonically, advanced formally, structurally, any way you want to do it, and expressively. They are very deep, intimate, beautiful works, full of passion and emotional expression that most people would deny Mendelssohn because they don't listen to him. And they especially don't listen to his quartets because they think that string quartets have to be like, classical string quartets, and that nothing interesting happens in chamber music. And that's totally wrong. Most of the most interesting stuff that happens in Mendelssohn happens in his chamber music. So the first 2 quartets are experimental, questing, for their dates, very modern pieces. I mean, the dates of them are, well, they're not here, so of course I'm not going to go look again, but they were later, obviously. Then after those first 2, he wrote 3 quartets, the Opus 44 quartets, numbers 1, 2, and 3. See, there's 3 of them. And these quartets follow a more classical structuring. In terms of having 4, standard movements, and without, quirky things happening or cyclical references, or they are pure classicism in his string quartets. And for that reason, some people who know that, the guy can't win. They say, well, his first 2 were so experimental and fascinating. The others are rather more predictable and traditional. But you have to remember, when Mendelssohn was writing in the 1830s, nothing was traditional. He was the tradition. He invented the tradition along with the other composers working at the same time. And so the Opus 44 quartets are extremely polished, and brilliant and disciplined and gorgeous works. They are not quite as emotionally extreme as the first two. But so what? I mean, that doesn't mean they don't have feeling. It doesn't mean that they're not fabulously written and wonderful to hear. And they are. They are. They're a joy. They're a joy. And because they're so beautifully proportioned and sort of classically fixed, people tend to poo-poo them, which is a terrible mistake. You go and write a better quartet if you can do better. I mean, come on. But then at the very end of his life, he wrote his quartet in F minor, which is Opus 80, number 6. It's his 6th quartet. He wrote it in the wake of the death of his sister Fanny, who was the person closest to him in his entire life. And he just poured all of his grief and despair into this quartet. And this is one of the most harrowing, scary, dark pieces of music you will ever hear in your entire life. It's also enormously sophisticated in the way it's put together because it's Mendelssohn, and that's the way Mendelssohn operated. But if you want an expressionistic gut punch of a piece, listen to Mendelssohn's 6th Quartet because it just hits you. It'll really hit you, and it is intense beyond belief, and it's so not like what people normally say Mendelssohn is. And it is an extraordinary work. You know, not a lot of composers write pieces that express, high tragedy or intensity of despair and emotional turmoil. It's just too tiring. They just don't do it that often. And Mendelssohn himself died shortly after writing it. So, because his life was quite brief, he was only about, 42? I can't even look at this. The date's not here. It was 1809 to 1847, whatever it was, something like that. And so you're 38, I guess he was when he died. I think that's about the number, isn't it? So he achieved an amazing amount of music in a very, very brief time, just like Mozart did, for example. And his works show an amazing maturity from his early teens onward. So you can hear this progression and realize that, he wasn't like some sort of Victorian poster child. He was a composer with feelings and emotions, and he expressed them with great intimacy and point in his string quartets. And this set on Cedille with the Pacifica Quartet is just about one of the greatest sets of string anythings I have ever heard. It's unbelievably thrilling. And there are many fine performances of these quartets. I mean, they've been very well served by most quartets, but they don't get a lot of attention, these pieces. And it is a terrible shame because it's one of the great sets of chamber music by anybody, anytime. And if you're a classical music collector and you're really looking to, start to understand, the great works by the great composers, of whom Mendelsohn was certainly one, nobody really challenges that, then you got to have these. And I have to have these because I love them. They are extraordinary. So keep on listening, friends. Thank you so much for joining me. Take care.